lot of art stuff for duck call companies,
Yeah,
or like duck call
yeah.
makers. That's
Yeah,
I
a
see
little
a
bit.
lot of that stuff from you. Is that how like you started doing a lot of your art, or is that something that stems from like way back?
Yeah, so like I was always like an artsy kid growing up.
Okay.
I was an artsy kid growing up, elementary school, early high school, artsy kid, and then I ended up on a baseball team. So then I played pretty competitive baseball growing up.
Okay.
I had some scholarship offers and stuff like that, and then just like never looked at art ever again. Tore my groin. All those scholarship offers didn't pan out, and then yeah, like art's always been something that's on the fringe. Like I'm an artsy person. Like I've always, I guess, like when I guess I never think of it as art, but like I had a knife forge for a couple of years where I was like, you know, I just like built a propane forge. I'd make knives for no other reason than just like I thought it was fun to hammer on steel.
That's really cool.
And just like different projects like that where I'm always like creating something. So yeah, it's always been on the fringe. I guess it's like one of those things that I still to this day when people are like, oh yeah, you're art. I'm like, I don't know if I call it that. I just call it doodles because like that's I feel like that's all it is. I'm like, it's yeah. So if you could see some of my concept sketches, it is doodles is gracious. But so I'd never done digital art my whole life, never. I'm not a computer person. So the funny thing is now is like people see that I've done logos and they reach out to me like for computer advice every once in a while, like, hey, like you build websites? And so like, I don't own a computer. Like I have the iPad that we're doing this on and I have my cell phone. That is the only technology I own. I don't own a laptop. I don't own any of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not very tech savvy. So like I'd never done digital art. And then there was a friend of mine who was looking, he was in Ontario and he was looking for some help on something, a logo he had, and he had drawn it up, but he was having trouble like digitizing it. And he's like, hey, could you color this for me? And it started out that I was like doing it, but I was doing it on paper and then sending photos back and forth. And he was trying to get it scanned and it was like this nightmare. And I was like, well, why don't I just get like, there was a young lady at work who does digital art. And I was like, hey, where do you do it on? She's like, my iPad. I was like, okay, I can wrap my head around an iPad.
Yeah.
And most 4-year-olds can, so I should be okay. So I bought an iPad, used, and then just downloaded the app she told me to download, and then helped him out, which worked. Then I helped the Punisher Waterfowl guys out. They were the ones that gave me my first gig, which I was super grateful for. I did a couple of pinup pens for them.
I remember seeing those. Yeah, which really cool.
It's crazy. Like I always feel bad sometimes with art. So I don't know, people can come after me for this one, but like, it's always weird. Like our art is an evolution. So it's like, I look at like the first couple pieces I've done to now, and it's like, it just is constantly evolving, right? So like your latest piece is always maybe your cleanest piece. So like, you always look back a year and you're like, I wish I'd done that better. But anyway, so like I look back at those and I'm like, ooh. But those guys gave me a start. And we worked together and those were awesome. And they put faith in me. And then from there, you know, then a fishing company reached out to me randomly, which I did. And then call maker, I think like 𝐥𝐤𝐤𝐿 was probably, I don't know if you know game calls, 𝐥𝐤𝐤𝐿 is a fairly large name, reached out to me and early on and was all in, like gave me faith to create his logo. And it blows my mind because like I said, like I look at this as doodles and like these, like, I don't know, man. I always like put up these appreciation posts and I never know if I like do it to the extent that like what's in my heart, but it's like, this is people's livelihood. Like whether they're a part-time call maker or a full-time call maker, like they want me to like draw something that's going to help them sell calls, which like may be dramatic, but like that puts either A, it puts gear in their truck, or B, puts food in their family's mouths. And that's crazy to me that you're like reaching out to me, who's a nobody, to doodle something of that import. But yeah, so anyways, I've never done digital art. I bought an iPad in October of this last year. So 7 months ago, 8 months ago. And then, yeah, I've just been kind of doing it ever since, just making doodles. That's it. I like, my goal number one is always just to like find the image that people don't know maybe they're after. Like the amount of things people are like, hey, can you do this? And then I start asking questions and we end up way, way different than where we started is often. But I think like a lot of, and I don't know anything about graphic design. So again, I don't mean this to throw shade at anybody because I don't know, like I'm not in the industry. I'm a butcher by trade. I cut meat. I'm not a bright fella. So I don't know anything about the industry, but like, I don't know. It's weird when I work with these folks and like maybe some of them have worked in the past because obviously they got their first logo somewhere. And like, they just kind of like, people just hear like, here, this is your image. Hope you like it.
Yeah.
And that blows my mind because like, I would never be able to sleep at night. So my thing is like, I always ask like, some guys I always tell them like up front, like, hey, I'd love to work with you. I'm going to ask like so many questions. You're probably going to be annoyed for like the next week. And it's like, I ask like, cause I like to tuck personal stuff into things. And some guys like that, some guys don't. And we discuss that. So like, and I won't like name names or point anything out, but it's like some guys like to have, I don't know, like it'll be something insignificant. I'm like, maybe this is my favorite duck. Like this is the first duck I shot with my dad. So like we work that into the image, right? Like maybe he's the only dude that knows it's in there, but that's in there, right? And it's like, it's those personal touches that I think like, it just makes me feel way better about what I made. Right. And I think it makes them feel way more excited to use it. So like, I don't know why people wouldn't go through that process. I mean, it's more lengthy and like it consumes my time, but like I haven't got in it to make money. I mean, yeah. I definitely learned a hard lesson that like I was way undervaluing what I was doing to start. Yeah, because you never know, right? I was like, I don't know. I was like doing these things. I was like, I don't know, give me $50. That sounds great.
Right.
And I actually did a job for a fella in Ontario again, because I've done the States, kind of Corey Elkerton. And I was like, hey, he's like, what are you going to charge me? I was like, I don't know, man. Let's see how long it takes and we'll figure it out. So I did it all. And I was like, I don't know, like $100 Canadian. So like $6 American. And he was like, he's like, you know what I would have paid for this if I'd gone elsewhere? I was like, no idea. Not a clue. I've never researched this. I just started drawing for people. Yeah. Give him the pictures. I don't know. He's like, anyway, so like me and him had like, yeah, he was very honest and brutal and gave me some good advice. And I mean, I'm still nowhere. I still don't charge anywhere near what a graphic designer would charge. And that's not an advertisement. I just am underqualified, full disclosure. And therefore I don't think I deserve what the guys who have put the time and effort and have experience in for. Like you pay, when you pay an artist, you pay for their experience, you pay for their portfolio, and you pay for their knowledge. And like, I don't have all of that. Like I've been doing graphic art for, I don't know, 8 months. So like what So I'm not working to undercharge anybody either on the flip side of that coin. I do me. I work with people I want to work with. For me, it's way more about the connection. Like the amount of people in the call industry that, again, I won't like point fingers at anybody, but like there's people in the call industry who have reached out to me to work with me, who I've like looked at their calls for the last like year and a half and be like, man, I hope one day I can afford one of their calls. They're so awesome. And then they message me and are like, hey, you want to do a logo? I'm like, what the heck? Like what upside down Stranger Things universe are we in that you're messaging me? Like,
see, but I think that's so cool because like first of all, like you do the mail day stuff on Facebook where like, cause they'll send you calls or stickers or whatever.
I do like
the logos.
A lot of my jobs I do in trade, right? Where it's like, they're like, oh, this. I'm like, why don't we just, cause like your calls are probably what I would charge you. So why don't we just do a swapsies? So then they mail them to me. Yeah,
but it's just so cool to see like how that collection has stacked up just based on like what you've done, because I personally think that the stuff that you do is great. Like it's so cool to me much. And I think that there's a lot of people that feel that same way. And you're like me, like if somebody tells me my pictures are this level or that level, I'm like, no, but thank you. It's essentially, it's hard to take a compliment with something that like you just don't see it looking at yourself. You are your own worst critic.
I think so. I think it's like twofold on the, I don't know about like for critic. I think it's, and the makers, all the makers I've talked to, like call makers, are in the same boat for the most part. You're probably in the same boat. I'm in the same boat. It's like, it's critic for one part. And I think for me, maybe this is me personally. So I'm just going to say this me personally. And if anyone relates to this, then I'm not alone. And that's awesome. But like my thing with anything I do, whether it's like calling, whether it's my like doodles, whether it's duck hunting, like I never want to be the best. Not because I don't want to be the best at what I do, but because like if I'm the best, then I get bored. Right? Like, I don't know if that makes sense. It's like, I don't want to be like the greatest doodler of all time. Cause like, well, okay, well then that's great. What else? Like, I'm going to go do something else I'm crappy at. Cause it's way funner. It's way funner to improve on stuff. So like, I think a lot of us, if there's something that like you really truly enjoy, you want to have room to improve. Yeah.
Well, it's a competition thing.
Yeah. And I'm always in competition with myself big time. So it's like, if everyone's like, oh, your doodles are amazing. I'm like, it could be better. Yeah. Like, it's like you keep yourself automatically humble. Not that they're crap. Like I'm never the guy who's like, I just draw trash. Like I can recognize it. Like, you know, I do sufficient stuff, but like, it's definitely a thing. Like in your photos, man, are amazing. So like,
I appreciate that.
Stop and make sure I echo that. But it's probably the same, right? You look at a photo that I might look at and be like, that's the Mona Lisa of waterfowl photos. And you're like, well, I wish I had cleaned up this corner a little bit, right? Like it's just like you, like you automatically like you draw it back. You're like, it could be better. because that keeps you driven, right? Keeps you motivated, right?
It always makes you think about what you're shooting. In my case, it's always like there's the picture that I've taken of my dog that it's my Facebook profile picture.
Yeah,
it is like
man.
it is
yeah.
There is one thing I wish I could change about it, and there's a piece of blind grass that's coming right on his side of his face. Yeah. And nobody would look at it and see it, but I saw it and I'm like, this would be the perfect photo if that wasn't there. But it also gives it some character, like he's in the blind, like he's covered up. So like there is going to be the blind grass right there. So like somebody else might look at that and be like, no, it's still perfect. Like that gives it that little detail. And I look at it and I go, I just wish it wasn't there. See, but it's crazy. You're always your own worst critic.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I love those things where like in photos, and like I think so, your photos have a lot of it. A lot of waterfowl photos do, just by the nature, where it's like it's forced perspective. Yes. Where it's like you might have a couple like corn stalks that are like right like 2 inches in front of the lens, and then the bird's like 20 feet away. I love that, where it's like you're looking through. I don't know. That's my jam. It's like whenever there's like grass layered over, I'm like, oh, I'm all for it. Like, that's the depth of the photos that you can really get into, is like incorporating foreground and background, and like you said, like you start to look at that kind of stuff as you go on and be like, that's what I like, that's what other people like. How do I incorporate that into the photo to make this more interesting? Because if it's just a picture of a bird flying with a blue sky behind it, it's like, to most people it's probably a good shot, but to me, I look at it and I go, it's boring. Well, so do you have like with photographer, you do have, because I would say, like when I scroll through Facebook, I would probably not out of a lineup, but I know your work when I see it like that. You know what I mean? It's you have a style. Yes. And to, I don't know, to loop this all back to where the start was, like, with my art, I definitely have my own style. Like it's funny, like guys are like, I want you to draw this. And I was like, I can do that, but have you seen my other stuff? They're like, well, why? That's not what I'm looking for. I was like, because it's going to look that vibe. Like that vibe will be in your thing. It'll be a different picture. Yeah. It's still going to look like my vibe. And that's just the way it goes. So as long as you're on board with that, I'm willing to do it. If you don't like my vibe, I'm just going to and I'm honest with people. I mean, I think anyone who's approached me will hopefully echo that, because that's number one for me, is like, I will turn away work if it doesn't feel right, or if I know that I can't deliver on it. I will say like, hey, that image sounds awesome, I'm just not the guy. Yeah. Like if you don't like if you look at 5 of my pieces and 4 of them you don't like, I'm probably not going to be able to do this for you. And it's not that I don't want to do it. Right. I would rather you have an image that you're pumped about than ever have to settle for something I drew. Yeah. Right. And I think that's just where I'm at. But
I think that cool. too, like you have like a niche. Like a lot of graphic designers that you meet are going to be like, oh, I work in this industry, I do stuff for all of these different types of industries, but like for you, it's mostly waterfowl. Yeah. Which is really
waterfowl,
cool.
Fishing.
Yeah. The outdoors.
Outdoor stuff. Yeah, I think so. And that just happens to be like the Facebook groups I'm on. Like there's the odd person outside of that approaches me. I also do zero advertising, other than like I do appreciation posts for like the art that I do for the company, like if that makes sense. Yes. And I always tell guys, like, they're like, hey, should I tag you? I was like, sure, tag me. I'm gonna repost your company all over the place. Like, I'm not looking for anything out of this. Yeah. So like, it's not like I advertise, right? So I know there's a few people like, you got to start pushing into this. And I was like, I don't know, because like I have a full-time job. Right. Right. Like, and I don't know graphic design or doodling or whatever the career path would be. It's kind of feast or famine. Like I might have 6 projects on the go, or I might have no projects on the go. So when you got a mortgage to pay, that's kind of tough to do. So at this point, it's just a hobby. So right now I lean into the pieces I like, which I like outdoor stuff. Yep. And I just kind of go there. Like I'm not hunting down work. I'm sure advertise for more, but I don't know. It's not where I'm at right now. And for me, it's more about the connection. Like, so being as pumped about waterfowling as I am and calling, working with people honestly is more probably what I get out of my art. So like you said, they send me calls and stuff to go back to the collection. So a lot of times, like sometimes those calls are tips, or like I give them the bill, they tell me like that's ridiculous, and then they tip me a call, or sometimes we do it in trade. But like everything I've added to my collection. So I started out I bought Ducklander calling company. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
I've heard it. Yep.
Yeah. So I heard Bobby talking on a podcast. I want to say it was the HP Waterfowl podcast way back.
Yeah.
Could be wrong. Could be wrong. Yeah. I can't remember if that was that. I'm trying to think if it was that one. Anyways, heard about him on a podcast. I was like, this guy is awesome. Like, he was a dude that was passionate. He was all about getting like new people learn how to call. He was very much about like, be a minimalist, get in the field, just like pushing that kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, perfect. That's where I'm at. Cool. Someone who's like opening the door. So which is weird when I say I'm not a techie guy. The only reason I got Facebook slightly before I started doing like this, the doodling, was because that was the way you had to message Ducklander, because that was before you had the new website and stuff. So like, you had to message them on Facebook Messenger, and my wife wouldn't let me use her Facebook. Because she's like, I don't want a bunch of like duck call companies messaging me. I was like, oh, fine, I'll like open up a Facebook. So I had never had Facebook before that. So that was literally the only reason I got a Facebook, was to get a hold of Bobby Hayes from Ducklander Call Company. So messaged him. I said, hey, I've never called before. I own a Buck Gardner Double Nasty. I don't know what I'm doing. What should I do? He like walked me through it. He spent his time. Awesome guy. So I'm pretty big on like, yeah, just like brand loyalty. That's something I think a lot of people should be bigger on, and which is hard with all the small shop call makers, because like, it's hard to be like, each one of them does their own thing, right? So it's hard to have brand loyalty. But so I started out and I said, you know what? I bought my Ducklander calls. I said, I will never buy another duck call. Ducklander calls all I ever own. So then I started collecting Ducklander calls, because I was like, I just want to support Bobby. I'm going to buy Ducklander calls. I probably had at one point like 13 Ducklander calls, different models, different things. And they're all black and tan. I had to have black and tan calls. Like, again, waterfowlers, for all we're worth, and all of the things that we do, it all boils down to one common thread. Is like, we are finicky as shit about colors, and we all love to collect stickers. I don't care who you are as a waterfowler. You would stab your brother in the face for a sticker. Like, that seems to be always the way it is. It's like, I got something, I didn't get a free sticker. Like, it is the weirdest. Like, I've probably done as many call trades as I've done sticker trades, where it's like, hey, I've got these 3 decals, you've got those 3 decals. And I've shipped stickers all over North America to trade for other stickers, because guys get excited about it. Anyways, side note. But so anyway, so I started buying those, and then I got super pumped on them. And then I was like, well, if I'm going to do duck calling, I'll do goose calling. And then I had no idea where to start in the goose calling world. I still don't know how to run a goose call very well, to full disclosure. But I came across Rusty Heron Game Calls. He was on a Punisher podcast. Same thing. I was like, this is a guy who's passionate about getting new people in. He's Canadian. So I was like, that was the first Canadian call maker I heard of. I was like, finally, someone in Canada. I'm going to buy that guy's shit till the end of time. He's Canadian.
Yeah.
I didn't even know if they were good at that point. I was like, he's Canadian. He was on a podcast. He sounds like a decent guy. I'll buy his calls. So I bought his calls. Again, black and tan. All my calls had to be black and tan when I started out. And then I got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm just buying calls. Like, I was like chasing waffle sites. I was like, every used post I was scrounging through for like Ducklander calls, Heron calls, which I still have the most of those calls now. But like, it was like missing something, right? Like, I was just collecting calls. And at the end of the day, calls are like, they're chunks of wood and they're pieces of plastic that, like, if you know what you're doing, can quack. But there wasn't anything more there, right? Like, it's like you have this thing on the wall, and I don't know, man. I'm not like a mushy person, but it was all there were, was calls. So then I started working with these small shop call makers, and I'm trying to remember even how I got the first. So the first small shop call I got, I think, was 𝐥𝐤𝐤𝐬's call. Yeah, it was 𝐥𝐤𝐤𝐬's call. So I did a job with 𝐥𝐤𝐤𝐬, Lawman Game Calls, and I did his logo. And we were halfway through the process, and we kind of like tacked on another logo, and I still didn't know what the hell I was doing. He's like, hey, can you do this? I was like, yeah, sure, why not? It's all part of the bill. It's just another thing. And he's like, you guys like the barter system up in Canada? I was like, you like it down in Florida? He's like, yep. I was like, me too. So, because I had messaged him like a few days earlier, because he had posted up like an in progress pic of like all the pieces of a call he was building, and it was like this patinaed brass band, like African blackwood, and I'd never seen African blackwood in person that I can think of. And I was like, that thing is gorgeous. So like, what does a call run for? Like, I didn't know, right? Like, I'd been buying used Ducklander calls or new Ducklander calls and stuff, and I didn't know. And he told me, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, it's just not in the budget. And then we were working on stuff, and then it was like halfway through, he's like, well, you do stuff in barter? I was like, hey, he's like, you still like that call? I was like, yeah, man. And so we set up a trade. That was the first small shop call I got. And so less so about the call, itself, but it was just about the fact that, like, I mean, me and Cody, through that whole process of making his logo and chatting about things that were important to him, that I could work into the thing, like whether or not he was like knew maybe those were my questions were after, but it was like finding out things about his life, finding out what things were important to him, talking about why he liked chasing ducks, talking about, you know, just making calls, shooting each other. I mean, most call makers are night owls, it seems. Oh, they're either night owls or also I'm just 3 hours behind the rest of everyone who waterfowl hunts.
Yeah.
It's like everyone's like, oh, waffle at like 8 p.m. I'm like, well, that's right in the middle of dinner. Like, it's just like always it's just the way it is. Like, you're way later than I am. I'm gonna probably keep you up. But that's anyways, we'd always chat like late at night, like, oh yeah, it's like, I don't know, just random stuff about waterfowl hunting. Like, I'd ask him stupid questions. Like, and to me, they weren't stupid questions because I didn't know. Like, I was still learning about a lot about calling. Like, I knew a lot about ducklander calls. I understood how their calls, I understood the theory about how the calls work. I didn't know there was universal rules. I didn't know there was, you know, I never owned a wooden duck call because up in the Pacific Northwest, I thought like, well, it's always humid here, wood calls, that'll be a nightmare. So I just never even looked. But then I like talking to him, so I learned lots, right? And it was that connection. So for me, like, the call itself is an awesome call. Honestly, out of all the calls I own, one of his is probably like it was like Cinderella's glass slipper. Like, he tuned that thing. Like, I picked it up and I was like, wow. I was like, holy crap, I can blow a duck call. So, but it was that, right? So like, that call sits on my shelf and it's a beautiful call. It's and every call I own and every call I've looked at and chased, like, I doodle, and that's maybe my form of art. Like, the art that these guys create with a tube of wood, to me is way more insane. Because like, not only are they making something that's like aesthetically pleasing, from like the silhouette of the call to the materials they choose to the color combinations, which they have no control over whether or not it has grain or no grain. Like, it's also like, you'd be like, if I was doodling but I didn't get to pick the color of the pencil crayon, right? Like, it's just very and so like,
way different.
They do all that, and then at the end of it, you can make sounds with it. Like, it's just right. Like, it's that's a whole level for me. When I look at it, I'm like, you guys are doing real art. But so more than all of that, like, more than the fact that it represents his craftsmanship, more than the fact that it represents a badass call that'll kill a lot of ducks. Like, it's a representation for me of that connection that I got to have with a guy that in Florida, for all intents and purposes, for my entire life, unless something, you know, lines up stars wise that I'll ever get to shake the man's hand, I would never meet. Right. So it's just like this weird world now where I'm at, where I connect with these people. So that was like that moment. I remember getting that call and thinking like, wow, like, this is cool. And then it just having that call made me think about how that whole process went, which was still early on in my doodles. And I thought like, okay, like this is what call collecting is about.
Yeah.
And that's for me. That's not to say this is what call collecting is about for everyone. Like, you might collect calls because you love red calls. That's awesome. That's 100%. You might collect calls because you're one of the guys that likes to run waffles and you're trading them like stocks. Again, good on you, because there is money to be made there. But like, that moment turned a corner for me in my brain like that, where it's like I now instantly was like, the only thing I want to look at in my cabin is something that I'm like, I know the story behind that call. I know the story behind that call. I've chatted with that dude. Like, I know where he's from, or like, you know what I mean? It was just like, it became this, right? Like, and which luckily, like, the calls I've gotten from Bobby Hayes lined up, because like, we've had a lot of conversations. We've talked about duck hunting. I've sent him videos back and forth about like, why do I suck so much on a call? Can you help me? And then Rusty Heron, same thing. Like, me and him have had, I've had more video chats with Rusty Heron than I've probably had with family members on a phone. And we chat and we talk, and like, he's been super kind. And like, we talk, and me and Rusty have talked from everything from life advice to waterfowl advice to calling advice to just, hey, what's up? So, and that's the same with all these makers, right? So the calls now that I have in there, I can look at now and say like, wow, it's a very good representation. They're cool looking pieces. And then I also think like 40, 50 years from now, whether these makers become big times and they become the next chick majors, or they don't, like, you know, whether their calls are all of a sudden trading for $500 on the open market, or they disappear into anonymity like the majority of makers, it's like, no matter what, those stories don't go away from me, right? So I think that's kind of how I approach hunting, is like, the stories are always the biggest value.
Right. It becomes way more personal. Like you'll be
Yeah.
looking back at those calls and you'll remember the conversations that you've had with people, the interactions you've had with them, whether in person or virtually like this.
Yeah.
And like it just becomes something that's way more than just the call.
Yeah.
It's way deeper than that. Yeah. Which is really
100%.
cool. Yeah.
And it's twofold. So one, A, because I think it means more and I enjoy that more. And that lights a fire in me more. And then two, shipping to Canada sucks. So whoever lives in the States, like I know you guys, everyone I've talked to cannot wrap their head around like free shipping does not exist here. Like, even if it's like Canada, we don't have deals where like spend $5 and get free shipping. Like that just never, like I see all of the things in the States where like, oh, like free shipping with every order. I'm like, what is, like, that is insane to me. So the majority of calls for me to buy, so like if I buy, say like a $60 call, US, $60, it's like $35 US to ship it to Canada. So like, it's pretty hard for me to be like, I'm going to go into this world and start like trading and swapping calls, because I've lost money just on the car ride. So every call I own at this point, unless something drastic happens where like I have to come up with coin, like no call in my cabinet is going anywhere. Like they're there for one day when my kids decide to take them. And I hand them down to them. Like they're there for the long haul. So like it got less to me about just adding calls, because I think there's something so cool about just adding calls. Because it's like any gear, you want to chase the next and the biggest and the brightest and the fastest.
Right.
But yeah, that like I said, once that switch flipped, it's now my cabinet is just a permanent home for calls that hold some meaning. And I have my hunting calls, which are all out there with me every day and also hold meaning. And then I have calls in my cabinet where I may never hunt them. I may hunt them once or twice, but the stories behind them don't change.
Is there a specific call in the cabinet that like sticks out to you? Not anything that like you've paid a lot of money for, but like something just like super unique.
Super unique. See, to me, they're all unique. They're like kids. I'd be like, which is your favorite kid? Which one's like cooler than the other ones? Yeah.
Well, not, it doesn't have to be your favorite, just like something that like you weren't expecting.
That's tough. That's really tough. Well, actually, okay. So I have one call so I met a guy. I don't do this. Like, I'm not a huge social butterfly. So I met a dude online, which certainly sounds like a terrible story, but I met a fella online through Instagram who I don't even know how. I don't remember how we initiated talking. I actually don't remember how that happened, which is weird. Anyway, so at some point we private messaged each other. Turned out he was like in my area, which blew my mind because like there's no other people with calls in my area. So maybe it was a listing. I don't remember. Anyway, so popped up. Oh, I remember. He messaged me randomly because he'd seen my Facebook like you have with calls, and he lives about half an hour away. And he said, "Hey, I saw you post about this calls. Do you know anything about call values?" And I said, "Not a ton, but I know people who do. I can put you in touch." I said, like, "What's your Facebook?" He said, "I don't have Facebook, I only have Instagram." I said, "Well, send me pictures of calls. I'll forward them and I'll get you values." So that's how we got them. Okay. So that's how we got talking. So then so we got chatting. I ended up out that way for an appointment or something. And he was like, "Why don't you swing by my house?" I was like, "All right, sure." Which I don't do. So I was like, "Yeah." I was like, another guy who likes duck calls. I'm having a beer with him because I've never met anyone else in my area. So I show up to his house. Turns out doesn't collect duck calls. I was like, "Oh, okay." Collects decoys. So a whole nother world of waterfowl collecting, which I was like, awesome. So now I got the tour of all his decoys, which he had some wicked cool decoys. I'm actually really looking forward to him. He's a brant hunter. So, which I've never hunted brant. We have a very small brant season. It's like 3 weekends, and it's not like 3 weeks. It's like just the weekend.
Just the weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. So that to me is cool. Cause I don't know if you know, like Pit Boss Waterfowl, like you follow that guy at all.
Yep.
Like he does all the ocean duck hunting. I've seen that. I'm like, it's insane to me to be out in just water and nothing else and hunt ducks. I love it. The idea.
So the guy that took him on the Drake episode that he was on. Yeah. That's who I went sea duck hunting with out in Massachusetts.
Oh, it's awesome. Okay. Nice.
So he took Jeff out for the TV show.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's wicked.
Wild. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So I didn't even know that we have eiders and stuff in my area. Again, because like I'm really close to the ocean, but I assume like I don't know. I never looked into ocean duck hunting because like that's an East Coast thing. I just thought, like
It's different.
I was like the mallards stop at the shore and then there's some pintails and then that's it. Like then it's just the wasteland of no ducks. But apparently there's like eiders. We have all sorts of stuff out there. So anyway, so went to his house, sight unseen, had a beer, ended up getting a couple calls off him because because in our area, Brant's is kind of like a very traditional style of hunt. So not a lot of young folks do it. I mean, it's only 3 weekends of the year. You got to have a lot of specialized gear.
Yep.
So it's a lot of the old timers who have done it forever kind of thing. So a lot of those old timers, because he's roughly my age, like give him some old hand-me-downs. So he's like, yeah, I gave him these calls. You know what? Why don't you just take them? Because like they weren't super valuable calls. Is where we're going with all this anyway. So one of them is like an old chieftain call, which is a duck call company out of Ontario that's now long closed. It's worth about $4.50 US, $4.50. So $95 American or Canadian, sorry. It's very expensive Canadian call, not very expensive US call. No, it's not. It's like a $10 call in Canada even. So it's just a weird call that I never thought I would end up with. Again, another Canadian call maker I didn't know even existed because they're long since closed. It's hideous as all hell. Sounds terrible. The reed is like cracked in half, like it's old, like it's just like nothing about it is good. Other than the fact that it's like, I don't know, I met this random dude who now I'm going to go brand hunting with. I mean, we're supposed to have beers tomorrow. So that's the only reason it's in my cabinet. It's because of that. Because like, other than that, it is not nice at all.
That's so crazy. Like it's just another aspect of waterfowl too, is like you can meet anybody that waterfowl hunts and you're more than likely just can't get along with them.
There's a joke. I don't even know where I saw it, but they always say like, how do you know a waterfowler's in the room? And they go like, how? It's like, they'll tell you. And if you've ever been to a party with a guy who waterfowl hunts, that's the case. Yeah. Because at some point they'll be like stirring the punch bowl, like, oh man, like I put 6 decoys in here. You waterfowl hunt? And then like next thing you know, you're talking waterfowl. Like,
it's so true.
Yeah, they just find a way to work it in conversation. Like
somebody that doesn't waterfowl hunt and hears that, they're gonna be like, this dude's so weird.
Yeah. But as soon as someone else in the room, like, did he say? You're like, all right,
you say decoys?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like you drop code words, like duck under that doorway. You're like, did you say ducks? Oh yeah, I'm partnering up with you. But yeah, it's like that's always we love to talk about it, and it's a passionate sport, right? So, and it's different. I mean, like guys are still sensitive about their spots, like deer hunting, and like no one's gonna give you their super secret spot, but because it is like fishing. And it shares so much like land. It's like, well, you're going to go hunt ducks on the same river I'm going to go hunt ducks on. Right. Might be 2 different holes. We both have the same odds. Like there's like less, like there is the secrecy, but at the same point, you're all doing the same thing. Whereas like deer hunting is like, you're on your grandpa's farm and like only your family's hunted that for like 200 years. And like, if anyone comes within 3 miles, like you're shooting at them, like, it's just a different, like, it's just different again. And every hunting has its own awesomeness, but waterfowling is just unique.
Yeah. Well, I think if you live anywhere near water, the wetland is going to be more abundant than like woods. So like you're going to see a lot more waterfowl hunters generally than deer hunters. Like you'll run into more waterfowl hunters than deer hunters. But like in my area, we still have woods and stuff, and there's a lot of deer hunters still. Mm-hmm. But most of the public land is where you're going to see waterfowlers in our area, at least.
I'm trying to think. I don't know which way I'd split it. See, like I'd split it 50-50 probably, to be honest with you. Yeah. Because like we got a lot of like hunters, like not that they do a lot of hunting in our direct local area, like it's all 45 minutes away that they go hunting, but there's probably more folks. Yeah, I don't know. It'd be 50-50. I would say in our area.
I'd say like, well, like for us up by the lake, you're generally going to have more, you're going to run into more waterfowl hunters, but like in the southern part of Ohio is where like we're known for our big deer. So like the state, I would say that the state as a whole has more deer hunters, but like I don't run into deer hunters when I'm on public land. I run into duck hunters when I'm on public land. But if you go south, you're going to only see deer hunters because there isn't a lot of water down there.
Yeah, I think just because like what we were talking about earlier with our ecosystem being so diverse, like because if I drive 20 minutes in a straight line, I'm in all like farm fields and like riverbed. Yeah. And if I drive 20 minutes in the opposite direction, I go up like 300-400 feet in elevation, and I'm now just in like heavily wooded pine forests. Yeah. So like if I'm up there on public land, I'm not bumping into waterfowlers. But if I
Makes
go the
sense.
other, like, so like it like 50-50 split. It just depends on where I throw the dart at the map. But that's
fair.
only because like, and especially where I am in the Fraser Valley, like if I drive a half an hour in any direction, I'm doing anything from skiing to sturgeon fishing to waterfowl hunting to deer hunting, all within a half hour anyway, right? So like I'm very lucky. I'm blessed to be where I'm at that way. So it's tough to split it, right? Like, well, I would say we have, if you had to pick the majority of what you'd bump into on public land in my area, it'd be fishermen, hands down, double.
Yeah.
If you took waterfowler and deer hunters and combined them, fishermen would triple them easily, because we have like salmon runs, we've got sturgeon, we got so much stuff here.
Yeah.
And that's
that's the same for us, because we're like great. Lake Erie, they claim it the walleye capital of the world, or walleye capital of the states. And so we have the craziest walleye fishing, and like the lake is so big that like our hatches, as good as the catching is, the hatches are even better. So every year we end up with a better population. And so like people come from all over the country to fish here, but we're not a destination for waterfowl hunting unless people want to like lay out shoot divers in the middle of the lake. We have guides for that. And like, it's a very specific, like, it would be a niche trip that you're like, oh, I'm doing the Grand Slam, the North American Waterfowl Slam, and you need like a bluebill, then you come here. There's tons of them. But like walleye fishing, it's just like, you can go out and meat fish walleye for a week straight and be like dialed.
that's up. So northern BC would be like that. So in northern BC, we had dynamite walleye fishing, northern pike, or pike, as you guys call them, we call them northern pike.
Yep.
And like big boys. And then lake trout, that would get big. So like walleye, pike, lake trout, and burbot, which burbot, I don't know if you guys call them the same thing, like freshwater lingcod. What that is, we call them. We have
burbot on like Minnesota and the Dakotas. That we don't have them around here.
So those nice. Those are the good. Yeah, growing up, like when you say walleye, the guys still say that, like even like in Ontario, they're like, oh, I went walleye fishing. I'm like, I haven't had a good walleye fry in probably like 16 years. Like it's too long. But I grew up eating walleye. Oh man, that rubs it in. But like I'm eating sockeye salmon now, so I guess I can't complain too much, right? Like although I don't know if it's just like, like everything's always better when you're a kid. I would hands down trade you equal value walleye for sockeye any day.
Really?
Yeah. But like, so now it's like rainbow trout, sockeye, sturgeon, which you can't eat the sturgeon, but you can catch it. Yeah. And like, every other salmon you can imagine, but and then ocean fishing if you go ocean fishing. But like it's different, right? Same as waterfowl, right? It's just different areas.
Oh yeah.
But even that's pretty drastic. Like northern BC, never fished for salmon my whole life. Never like we would eat smoked salmon that we would, buy from the store, but never but never eaten it. And then come down here and it's like, that's it. That's all there is. Like, well, what about walleye? Where do they go? It's like,
they don't just disappear.
You can't buy that. You can't buy that at the superstore. Let me tell you, they don't sell walleye. No walleye on the shelves. Yeah. That's awesome though.
Yeah.
And it is good, but fishermen here is way bigger. And that's because the Fraser River is like one of the greatest like fisheries probably in North America. Like the Columbia would be what you guys have, and they link into each other. Right. So
that makes total sense.
Yeah, we share that a little bit. Because of that, it's like we have people from I have a lot of guys I play hockey with that are sturgeon guides, and they have people come from Norway, like all over the world for the white sturgeon fishing here.
That's so crazy.
So that's our big bread and butter. So, and again, cheap investment, like, I mean, not cheap, but you get a good rod. And you don't need a boat, but you get a boat, and then you're good to go till the end of time. There's no decoys or something.
Yeah. Oh, fishing's way easier than waterfowl hunting. Absolutely, hands down.
When you talk limits, it was funny. I don't know. You said it way earlier about just like not always shooting limits, and like we used to get creative. I used to have a buddy when we fished, because it's not hard to catch fish here, especially like you can do real well. So we'd fish, and eventually we'd always like at any given point there'd always be one of us. It was we'd call fishing derby. So it was like fishing derby, and like from that point on, most fish wins. That's it. But then like it would get to the point where like you're like, I don't know, like you just lose track. It wasn't fun. So then we like got to this point where it would always be like then it would just be like ridiculous stuff, like most colorful fish wins or like whatever. And so like you get to this point where like every fish you caught, you're almost trying to sales pitch it. Like look at the blue hues on this rainbow trout. Like look at his gill. Like you're like so he waterfowl hunts with me every once in a while, and like we'll have a slow day. where we've been out for like 2 or 3 hours. We each drop a duck or two. So that's what we're doing in the blind. I'm like, well, look at the plumage on this thing. Like, look at these scapula feathers. They're way bluer than yours. Like yours is not winning this
You're making
contest.
a competition out of it.
And he's like, no way. Like, look at the orange. Like a feet are so clean. I'm like, come on now. Like we're just like, yeah, it was like we're having a beauty pageant with our dead ducks. Because like you got to do something. We're not going to kill a limit. So it's like, well, who took home the most beautiful duck?
Yeah, that's
and
not
there's
a
always
bad
inevitably
thing
like
to do either.
It's so dumb, right? But it's like one of us shoots a drake, one shoots a hen. It's like, well, yours is brown and looks like trash, but look at the green on this thing. Like, so, and then then it's just never-ending trash talk, which you couldn't do in the deer blind. But yeah, you're just sitting there just ribbing each other, right?
That's so
it's
great.
always good. You got to get creative. You got to have fun.
Of
Got to make
course.
it good. Yeah.
Well, it's fun anyway. So
100% it is.
I like to close out the episodes. I always like to ask somebody or ask the guest if money wasn't an option. This being the Too Many Hobbies podcast, what hobby would you pick up?
What I pick up? So like something I don't currently do.
Correct.
What hobby would I pick up? Call making. Yeah.
Call making.
Which is one I've like considered. I haven't turned anything that looks. I've turned bowls. Like I have a lathe.
Yeah.
I have not made a call. I've not made anything that makes a noise. I've not made anything of the shape. Call making would be one. And I don't think I would do it with my lathe. Actually, to be honest with you, if I'm being totally honest. Like you know who Dale Bordelon is? You heard that name?
Yep.
Yeah. It's a fellow making like cane calls.
Yep.
Like there's something about that. Like I don't grow cane in my area. I guess like I mean like some people have like show bamboo gardens. I don't know if that's equivalent. I got lots of red cedar so I can make foam boards.
Yeah.
But like just that heritage part of it, I think like something like that, right? Like I mean, not that I wouldn't turn them on a lathe, but yeah, I think for me, waterfowling, the part that I lack in my area is the heritage of it. Yeah. Right? Like there's no big waterfowl festivals, there's no calling competitions, there's no real history here. Right. Other than the brant hunting, which is why I'm super excited because like brant hunting is the oldest form of waterfowling in my area. So it's going to be kind of neat just to see that aspect of it. But I think, just getting into the like making a call and would be an interesting, I think like trying to decipher a tone board. Again, it would be one of those things where like the one thing I like about trying to get good on a duck call is the fact that I probably never will, I guess. It's like this, like it's always a chase, right? No matter what, like
chasing it, it's never ending. Yeah.
Which is good because I find with hobbies, if you get good at them, they're just not as fun. Like even they talk to the guys who get super good at waterfowling and they like every hunt they shoot limits, you get bored eventually, right? So I'd rather have something where it's like, no, this is going to be hard for a long time, but I'm enjoying it. So yeah,
you're chasing that like end goal of like I could make a really nice call one day. Yeah. But it's going to come right back to like, oh yeah, it sounds good, but it could be better. Yeah. Or like it sounds good when you run it and someone else runs it and it sounds like trash. Like those some of the stuff the call makers go through blows my mind. But it's just I think like what? Oh, I was gonna say with Dale and like the stuff that he does, like I mean he's making punt boats. Oh and, like, man, that guy is. He had like feathers and crab bags that he was like keeping for down. So he all that stuff is just there's cool. And I don't know if he hears this and I'm wrong, but like there's some sort of I want to say it's like a school of some sort in his area that does upholstery or something. So he saves all the feathers for them to make pillows with, which is amazing. They just donate that, but like he only saves the pillows to donate to them. But like that's not the point of it. He saves the feathers for the fact that like they used to save feathers. Like everything that man does is about the heritage of it. Like hand carved Piro boats. To like cane calls to like I mean I think his shotgun is like from like 1896 manufactured. Like so just old. Like even when he like said it and he was talking, I was like, I don't even know if that thing's safe to shoot anymore. Like that's all he chooses to hunt with. Like he's all about just where it came from. And I think with waterfowling, that's a huge part of it. Like especially down there in the southern states, right? Like here, there's not that heritage aspect. So for me, that's always a big draw. Just it's cool to see those. Anything is like that though. Like it's not just waterfowling. I think no matter what you're passionate about, it's cool to know the history. Like I don't know if I have a buddy who's bigger into photography than myself, but he's all about like vintage cameras. Like
loves them, and I
film
get it,
cameras
right?
and stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
he loves like the weird, like put a gunpowder in a piece of wood and hold it over your head,
Yeah.
not that I think he owns like one weird one like that, but it's just cool to see like what you're doing and where it's come.
Yeah.
And then like to look at stuff like, right, like if you pick up a decoy from 1905 that used to kill ducks and you hold it up to a decoy nowadays, it's like, this is like a lump of crap.
Oh yeah.
Like someone carved this, someone hunted over it, like it has a story, right? Like it's, and the same as those old cameras, same as anything. So
yeah.
It's
we have a couple of museums around here of like old decoys and stuff, because there's a duck club in Sandusky Bay by us. That's like one of the oldest duck clubs in all of the states. And so like there's a lot of like the heritage, the history around here, and like I know people that are like into decoy carving and stuff that have given me like the same rundown, and like we've gone into the heritage side of all of that, and it's always so interesting to hear about it. I could sit in a blind and talk about it all day.
Yeah, that's why I like when you bump into one of those hunters, like this guy with the brand hunting that I've met, or those fellows with the wood ducks program, where you bump into the guys who are also passionate about the same aspect. And that's what I was getting on earlier, where it's like there's nothing wrong with whatever fires you up. And like I asked that of a lot of people, and I've asked that of people on podcasts, like when I'm on them, or even just in general on social media, of like what's that thing that fires you up? Because like when it comes to waterfowl hunting, it's like you're gonna get up, it's gonna be piss and shitty rain, it's gonna be cold, you're gonna be wet, the birds probably aren't gonna show up.
Yeah.
But like if you talk to any waterfowler, they are still 100% like fire lit to go out there.
Yeah.
At 3 a.m, pounding back Red Bulls and and pep and sheds. You know what I mean? And it's like what does that for you? And like to me, it's that aspect of just like that, like connecting, talking about the history of it, like just thinking about where it's all been, and that kind of circles back around to that second point of, if you're worried about the gear you have, like go look at any waterfowl museum. And I get the birds have evolved and our gear has evolved, and it's like any sport, the gear gets better, the birds get smarter. But like we're talking these guys like Pit Boss and Punisher did a hunt in PEI recently, and they still hunt really traditionally in the area where they're in.
Yep.
So they just take like old seagrass,
and
then just like lump it up on a rock, so it looks like a duck size. Like that's it. There's no bells and whistles. It's some old black rotten seagrass humped over a rock on the beach, and black ducks will decoy into it. And they were slaying ducks, right? Like, and they did it like that because it was like, oh yeah, that's how we've always done it in our town. And like they still like now in modern days put out some decoys and make lumps of seagrass.
Yeah.
But so like if they can kill ducks over a lump of old grass, like why can't you do it over 6, right? Like
right.
So yeah, just don't get too caught up. Like it all boils down to like the heritage of it, and all that stuff. It's all intertwined for me, and like it just kind of I don't know why I hit waterfowling, shot that first duck, started looking into it, got into like some of the call community, and like I would say I just like found my stride of something that lit me up with passion, and then added one more hobby to the list when I already had probably too many. Although I've nixed a few actually. Waterfowling was one of the hobbies where I was like, yeah, you know what, I'll let that other thing go. This is way better.
Yeah.
So that's been good.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on, Greg.
I again appreciate it, Brian.
Yeah. Anytime. Really anything you want to plug while you're on here?
You know what? Like it's not mine. I'll plug 𝐚𝐽𝐬𝐬. It's a community that I frequent, but it's not. I have zero share, stake, or anything in that, other than just saying, like, if you're a waterfowler or a call maker or someone who's curious or interested, and you're just looking for a community of good folks that'll be open and rally around you, 𝐚𝐽𝐬𝐬𝑠 is a really good one on Facebook there. 𝐚𝐽𝐬𝐬𝑠 group, find that, sign up. Other than that, I don't know, whatever area you're in, if you're in Brian's area, my area, or another area of anywhere in North America, or wherever you find your ass sitting, then if you're curious about waterfowling, like get into it. Don't get deterred by everything you see. Don't get caught up in all the hype and the buy this and buy that. I mean, that's anything. I can tell you, I play hockey, and the amount of guys I play with that'll skate on a pair of skates for a season playing beer league hockey and then buy brand new skates next season because somehow they're going to skate faster, even though they're 20 pounds heavier and 300 pounds more into their life. 300 beers more in their life. Like it doesn't make a difference. Get out there, have fun, enjoy it. Doesn't matter if it's old gear. And if you bump into someone and they frown on you for that, or try to make you feel bad for what you're trying to do, then they're not the kind of people you want to hunt with. So just shrug it off. Water runs off a duck's back, and hopefully lead pellets don't, or steel, I guess, depending on your area. So that's the dream, right? But yeah, I think just get out there, enjoy whatever it is. And if it's, and that goes for any hobby, I think, like to the form of your podcast. I mean, if it's photography, if it's doodling like me, like, so to round this whole thing out, like I doodle for people in an industry that are actually somebody. and I'm just a dude who doodles out of nowhere as of like 8 months ago or whatever October was. I can't even count backwards. That tells you my level of intelligence. But so I bought an iPad out of nowhere. I started doodling, and here I am doodling and talking to folks and that I would have never connected with. And I'm making connections. I'm enjoying myself. I still have no idea what I'm doing. So for anyone that's curious, I use an app called Procreate. So like there's no secrets. It has a pencil function and a paper function, and then about 3,000 other functions. But I use those two, and I'm comfortable with those because they're not very complicated. So, but just take those swings. Take those swings at things that you think you might like, because life is short. And if you don't like them, don't go buy 300 decoys first and find out you don't like it. Go buy 6, find out you don't like it, and then go try the next thing.
Exactly.
That's it. That's not a plug. That's just life advice. Hopefully that gets a few more folks out into the field.
I'm sure it will.
Yeah. And I appreciate, like, again, man, like your photography, watching your stuff. Like I said, I do all my doodles off of photos. I hate doing doodles off of doodles because it just feels like this weird, I don't know. So I'm always like scrolling like free licensed photos in the class.
Yeah.
Like, so, but your photography, man, is bar none. Some of the there's you and there's Matthew Hicks.
He lives like 2 hours from me.
Oh man, you're two guys. Like some of the shots you get, and I think to myself sometimes, like, this must have been like 4,000 shutter clicks for this millisecond of time to be on a piece of paper.
You'd be surprised. I mean? Yeah,
it's crazy. Like, yeah, what you guys do is gorgeous, and
he's a lot more risky in the stuff that he gets, but pays off. Yeah, he does some pretty insane stuff. Yeah.
Man, both you guys are doing awesome. I love it. But yeah, like you, I mean, you had to snap those first photos at some point. Yep. Right.
And then you go down a rabbit hole, and then you end up here.
Exactly.
The way it goes.
Yeah. There's a reason lots of folks have too many hobbies, but you don't find out the ones you enjoy until you give them a try.
Exactly.
So
that's a good way to end it off.
Appreciate it. And again, thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
And anytime.
It's been a pleasure. And this will be up on the 𝐤𝐸 Hobbies YouTube channel, and it'll be on any of the streaming platforms. So
appreciate it. I'll when it goes up, let me know, and I'll make sure I repost it around so everyone can take a look at this ugly mug.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming on.
Enjoy the rest of your night.
Yep.